When Pablo Escobar's men reopened some of the places where the cartel had stored its money, they sometimes found that the cash had changed. Water had worked through the wrapping, the bills had swollen, stuck together, and turned green with mold. In other bundles, rats had bitten tunnels through the stacks and carried strips of American dollars into their nests. The money had survived cocaine deals, border crossing, gunmen, and police searches. It ended up dying quietly inside a Colombian wall or beneath a farm. Roberto Escobar, Pablo's older brother and chief accountant, later said that the cartel routinely wrote off around 10% of its stored cash each year. Humidity ruined part of it. Rodents ate part of it. Some simply disappeared inside the growing maze of hiding places. Roberto used a business term for the whole mess: spoilage. Then he gave a number that turned the story into a legend. At its height, he claimed the Medellín Cartel was bringing in as much as $420 million every week. Apply his 10% loss to a full year and spoilage bill reaches $2.18 billion. Pablo could lose the value of a major corporation to rain, confusion, and rats, while another $60 million arrived the following day. At that pace, the cartel generated $2.5 million every hour. Another million arrived roughly every 24 minutes. Yesterday's cash could still be sitting on the counting tables when today's delivery began stacking up behind it. The figure begins to make sense when you follow the business in reverse. Cocaine left Colombia in dense, compact bricks. A kilogram could be carried by one person and sold in the United States for many times its cost. The proceeds came back as American currency gathered from thousands of transactions. Cocaine moved north in compact loads, while the money accumulated as loose paper that had to be counted, bundled, guarded, and eventually brought under Pablo's control. The United States banknote weighs about 1 gram. $1 million in $100 bills weighs roughly 10 kilograms. Under Roberto's estimate, a single week of cartel revenue would weigh 4.2 metric tons even if every note were 100. In 20s, the same amount would weigh 21 tons. The street sale often produced smaller bills, making the real load heavier still. The business had reached a point where cocaine was easier to transport than the money it earned. By the late 1980s, the DEA described the Medellín organization as controlling the chain from cocaine conversion and packing in Colombia through transportation to United States and into the first level of wholesale distribution in American communities. Every improvement in that machine sent another wave of cash toward Pablo. Faster aircraft, larger shipments, new routes, and wider distribution all ended with the rooms filling with paper. Pablo had built an industrial drug empire, and Roberto tried to build an accounting operation capable of keeping up with it. He later wrote that 10 accountants helped him track the money. Their work stretched far beyond adding columns. Each delivery had to be counted, sorted by denomination, tied into bundles, labeled, assigned to location, guarded, moved when danger approached, and found again months later. One of the smallest expenses reveals the scale better than any mention. Roberto said the cartel spent about $2,500 every month on rubber bands used to hold the cash together. That comes to $30,000 a year for a piece of elastic. The rubber bands were the cheapest part of enormous storage system. Cash needed bags, boxes, vehicles, guards, rooms, and people trusted enough to touch it. Counting machines jammed. Notes arrived dirty, folded, damp, and mixed by denomination. Delays created new piles, and every pile attracted thieves, informants, and police attention. Bank accounts made money easier to manage and easier to trace. Large deposits produced records. Transfers left a trail. Accounts could be frozen before Pablo had time to move them. His empire needed access to finance while keeping the source of its wealth outside the official story. To balance those pressures, the cash spread across Colombia. Roberto described money concealed in warehouses, behind the walls, beneath swimming pools, and across rural properties. Some bundles went into secret compartments, others were sealed and buried. Hiding places multiplied until the fortune began to resemble an underground country with its own map and only a small circle of people who understood it. Every new stash solved an immediate storage problem and added another secret to protect. Its location needed a private code. Guards received only enough information to secure the site. Couriers moved money between places while trying to avoid surveillance. A dishonest employee could steal part of the bundle and blame the shortage on a counting mistake. An arrest could turn a notebook into evidence. A death could erase the only reliable direction to a fortune. Secrecy protected Pablo's money from seizure and slowly separated him from it. Colombia's heat and humidity added another enemy. Moisture entered weak containers, rusted metal collected inside plastic, and fused stack of currency into dump blocks. Rats found warm bundles of paper and turned them into nesting material. The damage could develop for months because every visit to a stash increased the chance of exposing it. By the time container was recovered, the number of Roberto's records and the money inside could be two very different things. The flood was also becoming visible thousands of miles away. A former United States Treasury official later recalled that during 1978 and 1979, South Florida accounted for the entire currency surplus of the United States. Billions of dollars were collecting in a region where cocaine sales were exploding. The cash had grown large enough to distort the banking statistic around Miami. Federal investigators began following that distortion. Operation Greenback brought financial investors together to track drug proceeds through banks, couriers, and laundering networks. By 1983, the United States Justice Department reported more than 150 prosecutions and over $30 million in forfeited illegal assets from the operation. $30 million represented a major federal success. Under Roberto's estimate, Pablo's organization could generate the same amount in about 12 hours. The physical absurdity of the cocaine economy became clear during a later cartel-linked trial. Prosecutors wanted the jury to see what $2.1 million in cash actually looked like. One prosecutor recalled that the money had to come up by the elevator and rolled into the courtroom. In Roberto's version of cartel's finances, $2.1 million represented less than 1 hour of revenue. The cartel responded by pushing more value through laundering networks. One of the most efficient systems became known as the black market peso exchange. Its basic idea was clever. Drug dollars stayed in the United States and were sold to broker. The broker used those dollars to commercial payments or purchases, while the cartel received pesos inside Colombia. American cash became Colombian spending power without the original notes making the same journey back through customs. Importers gained access to dollars, brokers collected a fee, and Pablo received the money he could use at home. The system reduced the weight and expanded the human chain. Brokers, importers, bankers, couriers, and front companies all took a share. Each participant charged for the risk and carried information that could later reach investigators. Protecting Pablo's fortune had become a separate industry living inside the drug business. Over time, the legend grew larger than surviving evidence. The famous $2.18 billion red bill comes from combining two claims made by Roberto. $420 million in weekly revenue and 10% annual write-off. The cartel kept criminal records rather than audited statements, and Roberto later earned attention and money by selling his version of Escobar's story. Revenue also describes funds moving through an organization, while only part of the cash belonged personally to Pablo or remained in storage for a full year. Contemporary estimates were lower. Forbes placed Escobar in its first International Billionaire issue in 1987 and estimate his personal cash flow at least $3 billion with a net worth above $2 billion. Those figures still placed him among the world's richest people and confirmed the extraordinary scale of the operation while leaving plenty of uncertainty around the most dramatic family claims. The precise amount consumed by rats, water, and forgotten hiding places may never be known. The financial problem behind the story is far more solid. Pablo's organization controlled an enormous cocaine pipeline, generated billions of dollars, handed vast quantities of physical currency, and stored part of the fortune in places where climate, theft, memory, and animals could destroy it. As the empire weakened, every one of those vulnerabilities became more expensive. Pablo surrendered to Colombian authorities in 1991 under an arrangement that gave him extraordinary control over the security at the Envigado prison. His own handpicked bodyguards helped protect the facility, and the DEA later described this prison as his golden age because he continued running his empire with protection from both the government and his rivals. In July 1992, after authorities prepared to transfer him, Pablo escaped and spent the next 17 months on the run. Safe houses were raided, allies disappeared, rivals hunted his organization, and government forces closed the circle around him. A hidden stash remained valuable only while Pablo could reach it. During his final months, many of those locations turned into sealed time capsules. The people holding codes and directions scattered. Properties changed hands. Records became dangerous to carry. Money buried for an emergency could remain underground long after emergency had passed. When Pablo was killed in Medellín in December 1993, the cartel was already badly damaged. The machine that had created the piles had lost the man at its center. Cash hidden across farms, walls, and warehouses now belonged to whoever could find it, remember it, steal it, or survive long enough to return. The rats make the whole financial disaster visible in one image. One of the world's richest men producing money faster than his organization could preserve it. A legal fortune relies on records, ownership, access, and institutions that protect value. Pablo's fortune relied on secrets, loyalty, fear, and pieces of paper hidden from the world. The same secrecy that protected the cash also allowed it to rot. Pablo bought aircraft, estates, political influence, gunmen, and years of freedom. His money built an empire powerful enough to challenge a government. At the height of his power, Pablo Escobar had enough money to treat millions as storage problem and billions as spoilage. By the end, the smallest creatures in his empire were taking their share before he could.